You're watching Inside Thunder Basketball with Darnell Mayberry. I'm sports editor Mike Sherman of the Oklahoman. We're here at the Opubco Studios, Studio B, Darnell, and we're talking all things Thunder, specifically the week ahead for the Thunder, looking back on the best month of Kevin Durant's pro career, and then the big month of February for the Thunder. Darnell, let's start with this week. The Thunder has back-to-back games, Tuesday night against the Hawks, Wednesday night in New Orleans. Then Saturday, they go back to the West Coast in Golden State. Let's start with the Hawks. One of the biggest games of the year, I think, was that Martin Luther King Day game at Atlanta. Jeff Green, dramatic dunk, and a defensive stand. What kind of problems do the Hawks present for the Thunder?
Their length and athleticism, I think you have to start with that. They're one of the few teams that can match up with the Thunder's length and athleticism when you're talking about Josh Smith, Mike Bibby, Joe Johnson, Al Horford. These guys are long, athletic guys that really can get out and defend you and really create problems on both ends of the floor. So if the Thunder are able to take care of that and sort of limit their effectiveness, especially in transition, I think they have a good chance against those guys.
Darnell, when you look at that win over the Hawks, that's a team that's gone deep into the playoffs, a team that gives the Boston Celtics fits for the very reasons you just outlined. Where does that win rank as in what has been a very impressive season for the Thunder?
I think it's up there. I mean, you look at it, the fact that it was on the road. The Thunder at the time were the only, and still might be the only team, Western Conference team that has gone into Atlanta and beaten the Hawks, which is a pretty good team on the at home inside Phillips Arena. So when you look at the fact that the Thunder was the only team from the Western Conference that was able to do that, that was a real good win for those guys. And like you said, it's a playoff team, real battle-tested team that's got postseason experience. The Thunder needs to learn how to win games like that against playoff-tested teams, and that was a real notch under their belt.
Wednesday night at New Orleans against the Hornets, and the big news out of New Orleans is no Chris Paul.
Yeah, it kind of makes you not want to watch the game as much just because Chris Paul is that exciting. I mean, the Hornets are still going to be a tough team. Darren Collison, Marcus Thornton, the rookies that they've got this year, been playing well in Chris Paul's absence earlier this season. But Chris Paul is really the glue. I mean, we all know he's what makes that team go. So, you know, sometimes teams rally around injured players, their injured stars, especially to start when their first few games that they miss. So if you're the Thunder, if you're a Thunder fan, you can't overlook this game and think just because Chris Paul's out, it's going to be an easy victory. They're still going to be a tough team to beat at home, even without Chris Paul.
John Rohde's got a blog right now on News OK on this topic, but there are certainly playoff ramifications on this Chris Paul injury. He's out a month for sure with a knee injury, possibly 2 months. Problem for the Hornets is you're getting deep into the playoff run right there, and this is a team the Thunder really will be competing with for a playoff spot in the West.
Yeah, I mean, if the Thunder wants to make the playoffs, they got to beat teams like New Orleans, because even if they stick around and are still there at the end, you're talking about tiebreakers now. I mean, they've already lost the tiebreaker to Houston, having lost 2 games earlier this season against the Rockets. You have to beat the Hornets just for tiebreaker purposes, because you never know. I mean, they could still make the playoffs. I mean, they could still be in the hunt. So if it comes down to that last week, 2.5 weeks of the season, then you want to make sure that you have some sort of ground against the Hornets, and if it comes down to a tiebreaker, you want to make sure that you have that over them.
Let's talk about January, Darnell. Mike Baldwin does a month in review every month for News OK. That'll be on the website on Tuesday. 8 and 7 month for the Thunder, which standing there alone doesn't really wow you. Here's what does wow you. Kevin Durant's performance in the month of January, the best month of his pro career, averaging 32 points, shooting 50% from the field, from three-point range, and then 89% from the free throw line. Is there something left for Kevin Durant to do that he didn't do in January?
Well, you know, I'm nitpicking here, but you still want to see him get his teammates involved more, cut down a little bit more on his turnovers. If he can do that, he's really going to take that next step. But, I mean, you're right. Scoring, passing, rebounding. I mean, he's doing it all so far. He could still do it a little bit better, but the efficiency that you pointed out, 52% from 3, 50% from the field. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. We asked him today about the MVP chants that you heard in the Ford Center on Sunday night. He noticed it. He smiled at the free throw line and wanted to wait a little bit longer to soak it all in. But I think he can get used to that. They're going to be a little bit louder from here on out inside the Ford Center.
Okay, Darnell, lastly, moving on to the month of February, 2 big things. Obviously, Kevin Durant's first appearance at the All-Star game, and then the trading deadline looming. Let's talk about the trading deadline. What kind of moves you see the Thunder making? And it sounds like you don't see them making a big splash move at the deadline.
Yeah, the main thing for this team is maintaining the salary cap flexibility that it's built. I mean, it took this team 2-3 years to build this salary cap flexibility that it has. It's got a tremendous amount of space going into, more than $10 million going into this summer. A lot of that needs to be reserved for Jeff Green and Kevin Durant's contract extensions. So I wouldn't expect to see a big move. A lot of people talk about Chris Bosh. I don't expect to see that happen just because of the financial purposes and ramifications that comes along with a guy like Chris Bosh. But they have some smaller assets. I mean, they've got 2 second-round picks this year, 2 first-round picks. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in those first-round picks, especially Phoenix's, because if they trade Amari Stoudemire, you never know. They could go into a tailspin. That pick becomes a lot more valuable. So they've got some assets. Aton Thomas's expiring contract, Matt Harpering's expiring contract. All of these are things that Sam Presti, the GM, could play with and sort of bring something back in return, whether it's a player or even a future first-round pick. I think we could see something smaller on that sort of scale.
Thanks, Darnell. That's all for this edition of Inside Thunder Basketball with Darnell Mayberry, but you can stay with the best coverage team anywhere, every day at News OK and every morning in the Oklahoma.